Irrationality is a superpower. The ability to be irrational is actually a superpower. Now, let me break this down. Today we live in a world full of data, algorithms, we're leveraging generative AI. We have everything now at our fingertips. We are more incentivized than ever before to be optimized, to be standardized, to be streamlined. And I believe that in this optimized world, that those that think outside of the box, that are way more irrational, that are coming up with ideas that the data won't show, is actually a superpower. You can call this innovation. You can call this, radical marketing or whatever you want. But to me today, this idea is a superpower. And if you look at some of the best companies in the world, they truly the transformative companies, they don't make sense. Red Bull is a great example. Doesn't really taste that good. It's a kind of an energy drink. I don't know if it's a coffee. It's a weird combination. It doesn't make sense. It's so popular. One of the greatest examples over the last 5 years is Liquid Death. Being in the DTC space, it's bottled water, which that in itself doesn't make sense. And then plus it has this crazy marketing. It doesn't have a influencer attached to it, yet they're all over the place. It doesn't make sense why it's so popular. Irrationality is a superpower. And as a marketer, I want to know what you think about this.
Okay, well, since you appreciate is it left curves or curveballs? Curveballs.
Curveballs, yeah.
Yeah. Since you appreciate curveballs, I'm going to throw one at you where I actually think the examples that you gave and going down that same path of thinking, everything is rational. It just may not be rational to you. And everybody has a pattern of thought that they follow to do something. And as long as they can follow the path of their thinking, they will get to an outcome that they can test and iterate and kind of move forward on, right? Might make them move backwards sometimes. Actually, that's a good thing. But I think we often confuse irrationality with unconventionality.
Right. Okay.
So when I think about like Liquid Death, for example, right? Great example. And it's funny, I was just reading something about them and I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, there's 150 brands of water in the US right now. How is it that these guys are crushing it compared to anybody else? Well, it wasn't actually irrationality. It was the fact that they wanted to appear cool in front of music audiences, at concerts, at events. And so they were like, well, bottled water always looks really responsible, really clean, really nice, really friendly. How do we look badass like a band?
Right.
So they made themselves look like a band. They put themselves in a can that looks like a beer, but it's not a beer, it's just water. And then they doubled down on events. So it's like, it's still very rational. It's just not conventional. And I think that is actually a bit more important. That's where like curiosity really comes in. That's where trusting your gut comes in. But your gut is still founded on some sort of rational logic.
So I think you've busted this concept a little bit, and I love it because I guess when I say irrational, I am picturing a whole bunch of people around a boardroom pitching these ideas. They're putting it up on the wall, and somebody throws out the idea of liquid death. We should call this thing liquid death. We should enter into into this crowded water space. Like, to me, that would sound irrational. But you're saying is that it is actually rational, is just unconventional.
Yeah, and it's just a bit wild, right? Like, think about it. I think what's cool about AI and data and all these things is like they still require the human curiosity and the human creativity to actually be dangerous, right? And I don't mean dangerous in an irresponsible way. When I think about it, it's like, okay, how do I know that something is working? I look at a metric. The metric could be as simple as revenue. It could be as simple as how many newspaper articles are written about me. It could be whatever. It could be as sophisticated or as simple as you want, but there is a signal that tells you that something is doing something.
Right.
So when you throw out wild ideas and, in this boardroom scenario, there's people who are making decisions based solely on the data, which to me is making a decision about the future by looking in the past.
That's right.
And then there's somebody who's ignoring all of that and saying, no, based on what I know about people or about behavior or about whatever, thanks to my curiosity and my creativity, I have this other idea. but somebody's still going to make you rationalize it in some way.
Right.
You gotta think about it in a way that makes some sort of sense, even if the sense doesn't feel like the obvious one. And at the end of the day, when I think about me, I've done a lot of dumb things that don't really make any sense in my life. I don't feel bad about any of the ones where I trusted my gut, because I know that my gut was based on some level of rationale.
Right.
Right? The ones where I keep beating myself up over them and I can't get over them are the ones where I went against my gut and I listened to somebody else because I didn't really agree with their rationale.
So are you saying that potentially that these ideas, these new products, new services, new companies that are coming out are not necessarily irrational or came from irrational thought? They're just unconventional.
100%. And I think that's the superpower. And that comes down to, I think, a little bit of confidence, right? There's a lot of people out there where you look at them and you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I do not agree with anything this person's saying. But you keep listening and you keep giving them the opportunity to share their point of view. Why? Because there is some logic to how they got there.
Yep.
Right? You just don't agree with it necessarily, which is fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to agree with everything, and everybody's not going to buy every product or buy every idea. But I think the curiosity mixed with the confidence to put it out there, that is the superpower. And true curiosity to me is the biggest superpower.
So when you're in these boardroom situations, and you've been in a ton, whether it's in private sector or public sector organizations, you're around a room, around a table, you're putting out ideas. You've done marketing for so many unbelievable brands and companies. What do you think is really stopping people from like picking the bold choice or making something that is outside, or making a decision that's outside of their comfort zone? What do you think is holding them back?
Well, I think there's two things. One is probably their confidence in themselves, because a lot of times people in boardrooms and things like that, they're not the holder of their own destiny. Someone's going to hold them accountable and potentially fire them, or they'll have some sort of negative consequence to the decision. So if they're not super confident in it, they're not going to run with it. But the second is probably it's not easy. If you're going to be unconventional, it's not the easy choice. It's never the easy choice. Right. The easy choice is just to find the winning playbook, keep doing it. Just do it better. Do it with more ad spend, do it with whatever. But that's the easy way to do something. The difficult way to do something is doing it in a way that's different than everybody else.
Yes.
And that's oftentimes the slow game. But who cares?
No, I love that. And I've been talking a lot about this more recently, is that, innovation requires you to do the hard thing, like do something that's difficult, embrace what I call the darkness. Like you have to be able to sit there and be willing to be the joke, be willing to make a bold decision in a world of uncertainty, which is really important. I actually think that the number one thing that holds people back is their upward mobility, their status, and their bank account at the end of the day. Like we're holding on to our status, our titles, our job, and we make really mediocre decisions because of that. Because nobody will ever question a mediocre decision. Nobody will ever get mad at making a mediocre decision, and that's what we hold on to. And I think that's the biggest. If you can remove that, that's how you get really innovative ideas.